People always ask me, how can I get rich quick? My usual answer is, don't rush. First, learn not to be poor. This answer makes them frown. They think I'm joking, but they're wrong. I never joke about foolish things. Those people are poor not because of a lack of opportunities, but because they are in a hurry. They want it fast. Fast money, fast success, fast happiness. But almost everything worthwhile in life is slow. You won't get smart overnight, and you won't get rich overnight. Even bad habits take years to destroy you, let alone good habits. I've seen too many smart people go bankrupt in my youth. It's not that they're not smart, it's that they're impatient. They're eager to prove they're smarter than the market. So they gamble, use leverage, borrow, and fantasize. They think it's called strategy, but it's actually a dead end. The accumulation of wealth is essentially a moral issue. It tests your rationality, your self-minded control, and your tolerance for slowness. I haven't made any genius decisions in my life. I just don't make too many stupid mistakes and let time do the rest. People think I'm a long-minded term investor. Wrong. I'm just a chronic patient person. While others are busy sprinting, I'm busy waiting. During the 1973 stock market crash, people sold their stocks in panic. I didn't move. I knew the market would eventually recover, and those who panicked were just selling their future selves at a discount. To get rich, you must learn to resist the temptation of speed. Those who get rich quick often lose it just as quickly. You don't need to be a genius. You need common sense. You need enough grit to stick to the right thing until the result comes to you. The truly rich are not those who earn a lot, but those who can quietly let their money work for them for decades. But for most people, the first thing they do with their money is to find a way to make it disappear immediately. If you want to be rich, you have to accept reality first. Wealth belongs to the patient, not the smart. Slow wealth is not laziness, but restraint. It's absolute indifference to short, modest term stimuli. It took me a lifetime to understand the two hardest things in life. First, that take on when others are going crazy. Second, keep going when you're not making progress. I've seen too many people rise fast and fall faster. They asked the wrong question from the start. They asked me how long it would take to make their first million, not how long they could endure boredom. Wealth is not a race. It's a test of mental endurance. Those who are willing to get rich slowly often end up being rich forever. You can envy others for being fast, or you can choose to be steady. But remember, there's a hidden iron rule in the market: the faster the path, the closer it leads to a cliff. People misunderstand compound interest. They think it only applies to money. In fact, compound interest first belongs to human nature, a person's way of thinking. If you improve a little every day, after a few decades, that's the chasm between common sense and wisdom. But the problem is, most people can't even stick to a little bit. Their ideas change every 3 days, and their emotions are more volatile than a skeleton. You can't compound chaos. You can only compound rationality. I wasn't smart when I was young. I just learned it slowly but remembered well. I would squeeze every lesson out of every mistake until I no longer repeated it. People always ask me, how can you stand those boring years, waiting decades for results? I answer, that's life, not a movie. The secret of compounding is that you have to live long enough and not do stupid things along the way. Many people, after making their first pot of gold, start thinking they're geniuses. They buy bigger houses, more expensive cars, and faster women. And then in the next cycle, they lose everything. You see, the enemy of compounding is never risk, but arrogance. Smart people often lose to their own intelligence. They think they've seen through the market, but in reality, they haven't even seen themselves clearly. They forget that compounding is not about growth, but about not making mistakes. Once, an analyst told me he'd found a sure minus win opportunity. I laughed and said, "Young man, if you find yourself winning too easily at the casino, it means you're the fool in someone else's story. Compound interest is never loud. It works while you're silent. It doesn't show off. It accumulates. It's like gravity. You can't see it, but it dominates everything. I witnessed this in Berkshire. The coca minus called the Warren Buffett just grew slowly every year. But after a few decades, it was a curve that went straight from the center of the earth to heaven. Why? Because we didn't move. We let time do the dirty work. But what about ordinary people? Their wealth is as fleeting as their attention span. One moment it's Bitcoin, the next it's, say, ICE stocks. Then it's the dream of real estate doubling in value. They think they're investing, but they're just speculating in a different place. Compound interest doesn't belong to the anxious. It only belongs to the calm. If you want to be rich, you have to be patient. Patient with time, patient with volatility, patient with loneliness. The smartest investment strategy in the world is actually to do nothing but stay alive. And that's the hardest part. Humans are naturally averse to boredom. But the soil that wealth loves most is precisely the word boredom. The most successful decisions of my life were not what I bought, but how much I refused. The true power of compounding is not in the growth of money, but in the consistency of character. One of my greatest discoveries in life is that intelligence is not the key to wealth. Stupidity is the cause of bankruptcy. In other words, you don't need to be smarter than others. You just need to be a little less stupid. There are too many people in this world who are busy showing off their intelligence, but end up exposing their foolishness through their actions. They buy stocks they don't understand, trust people they don't know, and envy lives that don't need, all the while thinking they're investing in the future. I call those people self-minus inflicted geniuses. I saw too many of them in my early years in California. They made money fast and lost it even faster. They celebrated every rise with champagne, but blamed bad. They didn't understand that the market doesn't punish you for being stupid. It just settles the score. The real estate bubble of the 1970s, the Midas call bubble of 1999, the financial crisis of 2008 every time. It was a group of people who thought they were smart until they discovered that intelligence is worthless in the face of leverage. I once said that avoiding stupidity is more important than pursuing brilliance. It sounds boring, but it's the most expensive advice I can give, because stupidity always has new tricks. Today, it's cryptocurrency. Tomorrow, it's, say, iStocks. And the day after, it's some friend's exclusive inside information. Human greed just changes its packaging. The essence never changes. If you want to get rich, stay away from those who want to get rich overnight. They are walking barrels of explosives. You don't need to explode. Just being near them is dangerous enough. I learned something in my early days at a partnership. Never make a smart deal with a stupid person, because in the end, you'll find their stupidity is more enduring than your rationality. Sometimes, the market is like a giant magnifier of stupidity. It turns greed into a frenzy and common sense into a joke. And then, in a single day, it makes everyone remind us learn the meaning of risk. I often tell young investors, don't rush to ask what to buy. First, learn what not to buy. There are no certain wins, only avoidable losses. The secret to wealth is not in finding opportunities, but in identifying foolishness, especially your own. I've seen too many people who are smart, educated, and have resources, and they are completely deceived by themselves. They overestimate themselves and underestimate the market, completely blind to their own blind spots. You ask me why I'm rich, because I'm used to doubting myself. I don't believe in emotions. I don't believe in predictions. And I don't believe in trends. I only believe in logic and patience. Once a person is foolish, they can't hold on to money even if they have it. Once a person is rational, they will eventually become rich even if they have no money. That's the reality. Wealth has never been a reward for IQ, but a return on rationality. You don't need talent. You need common sense. You don't need inspiration. You need self-minded control. To win, don't lose. And the first step to not losing is not to be stupid. I discovered an ironic thing long ago. People are not defeated by poverty, but by boredom. They would rather lose everything at a casino than quietly hold a high minus quality stock that is slowly appreciating. They say, Charlie, this is too boring. I see. That's right. Making money is supposed to be boring. If your investment makes you excited, you're probably doing something wrong. True wealth growth is like watching grass grow or paint dry. It has no excitement, no plot twists, but it works. The problem is, humans hate doing nothing, especially smart people. Their minds move too fast, and their patience is pitifully short. They always want to optimize, always want to do something. So they start trading frequently, chasing news, listening to experts predict the next trend. And then, like gamblers, they search for meaning in random fluctuations. I've seen too many people like that. They treat investing as entertainment and their accounts as playgrounds. And in the end, they lose even their entrance tickets. When I first bought high minus quality company stocks in the 1950s, I decided to do as little as possible. And one of the most correct actions of my life was to do nothing. Laziness. No, it's disciplined laziness. An ability to refuse to be driven by noise. We all like the feeling of action. Taking action makes us feel in control. But in investing, this impulse to act is your biggest enemy. I often say that the best investment portfolio is the one you don't need anyone to touch even after you're dead. But no one wants to believe it. They always feel they have to participate, or they'll miss out. But they forget that the market is not a movie theater. People who don't move can still see the whole show. Boredom is actually a friend of compounding. It forces you to be quiet, to be patient, to reflect on every decision you make. You have to understand that money doesn't reward the anxious. It rewards those who remain rational in calmness. Every market fluctuation is a test of your ability to endure boredom and loneliness. You will pay tuition, and it will be very expensive. Look around you. People are busy looking for the next opportunity. They switch funds, currencies, and trends, but they never thought that the problem is not a lack of opportunities, but their inability to tolerate the downtime. For decades, Buffett and I have been repeating the strategy so boring it makes people roll their eyes by good companies, hold, and then do nothing else, year after year. It's that simple. But simple things are the hardest because they require an anti-minus human first to persist in doing the right thing in an exciting process. Do you want to be rich? Learn to be bored. Learn to hold your hand back from moving. And learn to have a quiet mind. That's the realm of making money. The richest people I know don't have exciting lives. They've long since given up excitement, retaining only the feeling of compounding. In the end, you'll find that the most stable way to get rich in the world is to let others be busy making mistakes, while you are busy being bored. I've lived for 99 years and have seen too many smart people ruined by the same thing. Not greed, but envy. You can still control greed, but you don't even admit to envy. You see your neighbor change cars, and you start to feel an itch. You see your colleague stunt double, and you start to doubt yourself. You see a friend retire early, and you start to get anxious. None of this is rational. It's the oldest and most expensive virus of mankind. I've always believed that envy is the only sin with no joy for reward. Stealing at least gets you money. Gluttony is at least satisfying to eat. But with envy, you get nothing but news. It makes people do stupid things. It makes people chase trends, buy junk, and go into debt, just to prove they can win too. But the market doesn't care about your ego. It only settles the results. I had a friend in my youth who was smart, rich, and had a bright future. He later went bankrupt, just because he couldn't resist imitating another richer person. He bought their stocks, copied their investments, and even mimicked their lifestyle. As a result, he lost money in his self-minus respect. I told him the truth at the time, and he was not happy. I said, "You're not investing. They're trying to prove you're not inferior." 80% of the financial disasters in this world stem from wanting to be as good as others. And that's a race you can never win. You can overcome poverty, but you can never win a comparison. Envy makes people blind to their own progress. They only stare at how fast others are going. So they speed up, hold their phone, speed up again, fall again, and finally find that the person who stood still has actually gone the farthest. I never envy others for being rich because I know money is not the end goal. It's a test. Many people make money but fail the test of staying rational. Their wealth is just temporarily stored in their accounts until the next impulse erupts. Buffett and I have both seen this ending. We learned it long ago that more important than making money is not being controlled by emotions. Envious people are always comparing what others have. Rational people focus on what they can control. You can't control how much others earn, but you can control your spending. You can't change market fluctuations, but you control your patience. You can't predict the future, but you can avoid stupidity. True wealth is never the total amount of money, but the stability of your emotions. I only truly understood after I got old that the hardest freedom in the world is not financial freedom, but psychological freedom. When you see others who are faster and richer than you, and you remain calm and at peace, you have already won. Envy is free, but the price is extremely high. It destroys your judgment, steals your patience, and makes you lose yourself in someone else's game. If you want to be rich, learn to wish others well. That's an investment with a higher return than any stock. Finally, remember that envy is a luxury of the poor mind. Rational people can't afford it. Debt is a modern poison. It's not fatal, but it can slowly make you lose your freedom. The worst part is that it comes disguised in politeness. Banks smile and give you money. Credit cards give you points. And ads tell you you deserve it. But in reality, you are just pre-modest paying for future pain. I've seen too many middle modest class people devoured by debt. They think they're managing their lives, but in fact, their lives are managing them. They buy houses beyond their means, change cars, innovate, go on vacation, pay in installments, then more installments. In the end, their salary is not for living, but for paying off yesterday's impulses. They are not working for their families. They are working for the banks. Young people are especially at risk. They see debt as a part of growth. They think loans are smart leverage. But I'll tell you, if you need to borrow money to prove your success, you've already failed. The essence of debt is slavery. It makes you afraid to change, afraid of risk, afraid to quit the job you hate because you owe someone. I saw the horrors of the Great Depression in my youth. People lived on credit then. When the tide went out, they didn't even have pants to wear. I remember the streets of 19 Petito. Men in well-modest pressed suits holding signs saying, "We'll work for bread." They weren't lazy. They were crushed by debt. From then on, I vowed to avoid being a slave to debt for the rest of my life. I'd rather get rich slowly than get poor quickly. Rich people don't borrow money to save face. They understand delayed gratification and the dignity of cash flow. They use savings to create freedom, not installments to buy anxiety. Most of humanity's tragedies come from these three words by now. Pay later. You think you're in control of your future, but in reality, your future is already in control of you. I know a young analyst with a good income who is broke every month. I asked him why. He said, "Charlie, I have to maintain an image." I said, "Image can't be eaten. You're maintaining an illusion, not a life. Debt is a gentle trap. It doesn't force you. It tempts you. It won't hit you. It coaxes you. By the time you realize it, it has already trapped you in a cage. The most comfortable moments of my life were not when I made money, but when I knew I owed no one. That kind of freedom is more precious than wealth itself. Modern society will make you believe that you can't have a good life without loans. That's a lie. A truly good life is when you wake up and don't have to work for anyone. Don't have to worry about rising debt, and don't have to pretend to be rich. If you're in debt, remember you're not a bad person, but you're playing a game you're bound to lose. The only way out is to stop, pay it off, and refuse to borrow again. Don't let others' desires to find the rhythm of your life. It's okay to be a little slower. As long as you're steady, our freedom will eventually belong to you. Always remember, debt makes you look respectable until you realize you're just a prisoner in a suit. One of the most absurd things in this world is that people work hard to earn more money just to be able to spend it faster. I've lived for almost a century and have seen it cold. Hard fact, the poor are poor not because they earned a little, but because they spend too much. It sounds cruel, but that's the reality. I know countless are modest income people, doctors, lawyers, bankers who earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, yet are more anxious and more broke than workers with an annual salary of 60. Zeroth, why? They treat their lifestyle as a status competition. Their houses get bigger, their cars get more expensive, their vacations get farther away, and their bank balances get thinner. They're not managing their finances. At performing success. You know what real wealth is. It's not your annual income. It's how long you can live without working and not panic. Frugality is not stinginess. It's a discipline, a sober control over desire. The house I lived in when I was young was shabbier than those of many of my employees later on. But it let me sleep soundly because I knew I didn't own much. But I owed even less. Frugality is not about suppressing life. It's about refusing to waste life on vanity. Buffett has always lived in the house he bought in 1958. That's not a legend. That's rationality. We all know that the key to wealth growth is never about earning more, but about spending less. You can't control the market, but you can control your spending. You can't predict returns, but you can prevent overspending. I've seen many young people spend their first salary faster than they earned it. They say money is for enjoyment. I say, that's fine. When you run out of money, let's see who's still enjoying. Frugality is not about opposing enjoyment, but about understanding delayed gratification. It's about knowing when to spend, what to spend, and for whom to spend. I once said a sentence, whether a person can be rich depends on whether they can resist foolish spending. Modern society encourages consumption because someone profits from your impulses. The entire business model of the advertising industry is to make you forget rationality and make you think that happiness can be bought. That self-minus worth is equal to the price on the tag. But rational people know that happiness is not bought. It's simplified. When you learn to distinguish between wants and needs, you begin to walk on the true path to freedom. Frugality is the prerequisite for compounding. If you can save a little every year, that money will work for you. If you overspend every year, that debt will work for someone else. That's the difference. In the same amount of time, one person becomes an employer and another becomes a slave. You don't need to be a genius investor. Just don't waste. Don't show off. And don't be led by the nose by ads. Wealth is not the amount you earn, but your ability to keep it. The person who earns fast is not necessarily rich, but the person who can hold on to money will definitely be rich. Frugality won't make you rich overnight, but it can ensure you never go back to zero. Many people desperately pursue financial security, but they are never safe because they build their sense of security on the external world. They want a stable job, a rising stock market, a friendly government, and a good boss. But they forget that none of this belongs to them. Security is not in your bank account. It's in your head, in your judgment, your self-minus discipline, and your mental resilience. The most miserable people I saw in my youth were not the poor, but those who thought they were safe. They had houses, cars, and stocks, but they had no resistance at all. When a crisis came, they panicked faster than anyone, and the truly rich, even if penniless, can rise again because they know how to think, how to judge, and how to wait. They don't live by luck, but by a rational system. Buffett and I never rely on predictions because we know predictions are meaningless. We rely on preparation, on being clear-minded, and on not making big mistakes. During the 1973 crash, I saw streets full of experts, all explaining why the market had crashed. But I knew that explanations can't make you safe. Only cash flow can. Security is not about avoiding risk, but about understanding risk, knowing where it comes from, and knowing how much you can bear. You can't control the storm, but you can build a strong house. I never pursue certainty because certainty is a sham. What you need is anti-minus fragility, to let yourself live through volatility, and even become stronger. That's why I hate debt, hate excessive spending, and hate a flamboyant lifestyle. They all make you fragile. True security is the ability to maintain rationality and dignity in any environment. You see, a truly free person doesn't lose sleep over market ups and downs, doesn't change their plans because of a news headline, and doesn't chase trends just because someone else got rich. I've seen too many people who are successful on the surface, but are actually just passengers on a tailwind. Once the wind changes, I don't even know where the steering wheel is. Security is not a result of wealth, but a byproduct of the mind. You need to have enough knowledge to understand what you're doing, enough cash to withstand short modest-term fluctuations, and even more, enough composure to refuse foolish temptations. That is true security. The world has changed. The risks are higher. That's true. But one thing has never changed: rationality is always valuable. I was poor when I was young, but I never felt fear because I knew I could start over. My thinking, my habits, those are the real assets. If you want to be safe, don't look for guarantees. That's the language of swindlers. What you should be looking for is control over yourself, your emotions, and your actions. Remember, the bank can give you a loan, and the market can give you opportunities, but only you can give yourself security. Many people think that getting rich is the final destination, but it's actually just the beginning of a new test. I've seen too many people climb a mountain for 20 years, only to fall to pieces at the top. It's not because they're stupid, but because they've changed. When they were poor, they were restrained, rational, and hardworking. Once they had money, they started to think they were invincible. They thought wealth proved their wisdom. Wealth only proved their past self minus discipline. Money can corrupt the mind, especially a mind that has not been tested. I saw countless Negro rich in my youth in Los Angeles. They bought mansions, threw parties, and numbed themselves with borrowed respect. A few years later, they were all bankrupt. It wasn't the market that ruined them. It was their arrogance. I once said that every successful person must always be on guard against becoming stupid, because money will amplify everything about you. If you were originally rational, it will make you more stable. If you are originally foolish, It will make you explode faster. Wealth doesn't change people. It only reveals them. The people I admire most are not those who made their first pot of gold, but those who can remain humble, restrained, and clear-minded after becoming rich. That requires a very high level of psychological quality. Buffett is an example. He can afford anything, but he still eats a cheap steak. He doesn't need to prove himself because he understood long ago that being rich is not about having more, but about needing less. When you are no longer led by desire, that's when you are truly rich. Many people think wealth makes them free, but they forget that the more you own, the more you are bound. If you have a bigger house, you have to worry more about the market. If you have a reputation, you have to fear public opinion. If you have a status, you lose your spontaneity. I knew an entrepreneur who, before he became rich, loved his work and was full of passion. After he became rich, he was anxious and sleepless every day, worried more about losing what he had than what he could gain. I told him, "Congratulations. You finally have more complex problems than the poor. Getting rich tests your rationality. Being the richest tests your humanity. A true master is not someone who can be frugal when they have no money, but someone who can be restrained when they have money. When a person reaches a certain level, every dollar they earn can make them a little more arrogant, a little more blind, and a little more foolish. Unless you consciously resist this trend, you must always remind yourself that wealth is not a medal. It's a responsibility. It requires you to make smarter decisions, plan for the longer term, and make calmer judgments. My greatest pride in life is not how much money I've made, but that I've never let money change my way of thinking. I still hate stupidity. I still admire rationality, and I still know that walking slowly and steadily is the only way to be rich forever. Because in the end, wealth is not a numbers game, but a test of character. And most people win with numbers but lose on character. My philosophy in life can be summed up in one sentence: get rich slow. Be rich forever. Getting rich slowly is the only path that won't make you lose your soul. And those who can slow down are the ones who deserve to be rich forever. Remember, wealth is not the prize for running. It's the reward for patience. If you insist on being fast, then be prepared to crash and burn at the next corner. As slow is fast, steady is winning, and clear-minded is freedom.